Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So that's the infamous roll pin sitting in the middle of the sump off my GSPD. I showed you that in an earlier video. I've got the timing case off the bike now. So in here, that's where your alternator fits. That's the front of the crankshaft. This is the camshaft down here, and that's where your ignition can goes in. Diode board sits up on here. When I put that diode board in, I had forgotten, I was in a hurry, and I put it in on the rubber mountings, which were brand new at the time. I'd only replaced them about a week before the diode board shit itself. So I left them, but I'm going to put the solid ones in now while I have that off. I'll just pause this for a moment. So in behind the timing chest cover, there is what you see. That's the single row timing chain. This is the 93 model. And I thought I'd just show you a few things while I've got it apart. Might as well. So what? I'm really not looking forward to this job, but I'm going to do it anyway. This here is a steady bearing on the front of the crankshaft. It goes into the back of that timing chest cover, and it just helps with the alternator rotor sitting on the front here on this Morse taper. It helps steady the crank so it doesn't whip. This is your timing chain tensioner here. It is spring loaded, so in there like that there's a constant pressure against it, and this little funnel thing here at the top, that fills up with oil, and it sort of dampens this piston from going backwards and forwards, so that this is kind of spring and hydraulically dampened. It's a fairly crude thing, but it works quite okay. On the other side of this, going around here, there is a guide here. Now these two parts, the tensioner, the guide, and the spring that goes in there, they all come as part of a timing chain kit. This was the first timing chain that I replaced on an Airhead. On this bike I did it, was about probably the best part of 10 years ago now, or more than that even, might be 11. 10 anyway, but it's done according to the books, it's done 152,000 Ks on that chain, and the chain is actually still in quite good order. I was always taught when you put these things in that you put them as near as parallel and just kissing the chain as you possibly can without putting any real tension on it. It's got a little bit, and that's how I did it, and it's stood up really very well. It's a fairly small chain, but they do wear, but then on the other hand, they're not particularly difficult to replace. Now the main bearing carrier, to get to that, this is the camshaft down here, this is the crankshaft up here. I need to get the camshaft out, I need to pull this bearing off, I need to take the chain off and pull the sprocket behind it, and then I need to heat the block to get the main bearing carrier out. That's this bit here, and it goes right down to there, through there. And the roll pin is in that, or was in that. It's now in the sump, but there's going to be a new roll pin back in that by tomorrow afternoon, I hope. So I'm just going to show you a little thing now. I'm going to pause this for a sec. For anybody thinking they're going to be brave enough to change the timing chain, it's a fairly simple thing. There are a couple of really basic things that you have to do. If you have a look on here, I haven't got it right, just a moment. Now we're set. Before I did the video, I set it up on top dead center, but I didn't check where the mark was on the camshaft. So there it is there. See that dent? And if you were to look down underneath here at the teeth, which I don't think this will do, there is a corresponding mark in the bottom of the camshaft drive cog there, and they line up on top dead center. And that's a very important thing to do when you're changing a chain. Back off the tappets completely so there's no tension on the rockers from the valve springs. Set it up like that so that the two marks correspond. I often put a little dab of either white or red paint just there to make it easier for me to see, because I'm old. And from that point then you can take the timing chain off quite easily. This is a timing chain that has got a joining link in it there. The later ones have got two little circlips, and I believe they were so popular with everybody they've gone back to a fish clip now, which is a great idea. It doesn't matter where that is when you take it off. If I rotate that around another 2 times, it will come back over here onto this side, which is where you actually fit it in. You've got to take the tensioner and the guide block off to do the timing chain, and to do that you need to hold the piston back like that, and particularly when you're putting it back together after you put the new spring in there, it's a lot tighter. So I made up this little jig here many years ago. It's just a very simple little thing. I'm going to pause the video and put it on so you can see. So there it is fitted now. I've just pulled the spring back. It's longer on one side than the other, and the holes that I drilled in it are there to go over the domed end of that piston, and it'll actually locate it. I've taken the C-clip off here, and now I can just pull this tensioner off. It's actually not really too badly worn at all considering the miles, because this is a bit of a thing for me. It's the first time I've seen it since I've taken it apart. So it's not too badly, it's not all wavy. They go all wavy and crappy when they're really worn out. And what I'm going to do then is just undo these 2 bolts on here, take the guide off. The chain will then be floppy, as you can see. I'll break that, push the link out and drop the chain. In behind here there's a couple of bolts which I'll take out, pull the camshaft out. Bearing puller on here, or behind here actually, we'll get a gear puller behind there, 3-legged probably. Something soft but thick, like a big piece of chunk of aluminium or something like that I've got here, we'll put across there to save spreading the nose of the crank or wrecking the threads, and we'll pull on that block so that we don't actually pull the the thread or damage the end of the crankshaft. Now once I've done that, then we've got to heat the area around the bearing carrier and heat it up nice and hot, and extract that main bearing carrier out of the block, which is just going to be a lot of fun, but we're going to do it anyhow. So there you go. That's what happens when physicians start trying to heal their own bikes. They wish they were fixing someone else's than giving themselves all this grief. But when it goes back together, it will be beautiful.